Hello and welcome to episode number 4 of the Crisis Intelligence Podcast. Today is Sunday, June 29th, 2014. I'm Melissa Agnes, and this podcast is brought to you by Agnes Day. Let's talk crisis intelligence. Hi, Rob. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me here today. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Sure. My name is Rob Burton, and I'm the managing director of an organization known as PreparedEx. And what we do is we help organizations prepare for a variety of different, both pre-planned and unplanned crises. And we do that through exercises, tabletop exercises, all the way through to full-scale exercises.
It sounds familiar.
Yes.
So, and it's funny because we're starting to do a little bit more of simulations and trainings and workshops and stuff ourselves. And it's starting to become really, organizations are really starting to understand the need. Are you seeing the same kind of trend?
Definitely. We started out with this business some 8 years ago. And although a slightly different business 8 years ago, we were focused in the security space. But out of that came a number of security exercises that we had to do for some maritime and port clients. And throughout that process, as we realized, what we realized was that there was a thirst for information around how we can better prepare our employees, and the exercise, be it a tabletop exercise or a functional or full-scale exercise, there was a lack of knowledge but a thirst for it within that space. So we realized that fairly quickly about 5 years ago, and focused our efforts on providing that service to our clients. And from that point forward, we've seen just a continual thirst for understanding, because essentially it's another training. For us, it's another way to train and educate, and they're really enjoyable. It's a really enjoyable tool.
Yeah, that's the part that I think surprises the most people, for me anyways, is how enjoyable. It's actually fun. It's stressful,
Right.
but it's fun. Do you get the same reaction?
Yes, we do. The feedback, we always look for feedback, as you do as a service provider. And, the feedback we get, I think of one recently of a gentleman who'd been with the corporation over 24, 25 years. And, he came and shook my hand and he said, this is the most exciting training I've ever had since I've been with the company. When are you coming back? So they get a sense of, engagement throughout the training. They get the visual stimulation. It's not a PowerPoint deck that just, here's the next bullet point, what do we do now? But it's stimulating, it's engaging. You get people up off their feet, walking around the room, breaking down into groups, disappearing into different rooms with tasks to do, talking, engaging. It's a real great tool for training tool. And it beats kind of the one-way training where there's someone instructing on a subject and it's a one-way conversation. So yeah, they really are engaging and fun events. They should be, and they should be as well.
Absolutely. They absolutely should be. Team building, it's, relationship building with your own team and learning each other's strengths and weaknesses and how to work together. It really is a valuable practice. Now, I'm starting to see a lot of, for us, we're starting to experience a lot of clients or new clients that are coming and saying, listen, we have a plan. And normally it would be more of an audit. They'd say, hey, can you audit it and tell us what we're missing? Now we're seeing, can you put us to test so that we can see for ourselves what we're missing?
Yes, yeah, that's fairly common. There are two ways this is typically approached. You have those clients who are coming in and they're building from the ground up, but the larger group of organizations are those organizations that have some sort of plan in place. Whether it's a new plan, an updated plan, or something that's been sat on the shelf for a period of time. And maybe there's new management in place, or maybe there's a new drive, often coming down from the board of directors saying, listen, are we really prepared for a large hack? A loss of data? Are we prepared for an insider threat or some kind of scenario that would impact our reputation? So often we're finding now, certainly in the last 18 months, that it's coming down from the very top of the organization to management, and those serious questions are being asked. So what you find is that the existing plan gets dusted off, and that's often the request that we get as well. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, and they'll say, how do we go about testing it? What can we achieve realistically? Based on the team that we have, based on the current plan, based on our processes with regards to crisis, emergency management, business continuity, whatever it may be. And they'll come to us for essentially some advice. And we'll often give that advice to them based on a phone call or based on, a review of their documentation. And we'll say, this is the direction you should be heading, based on where you currently stand today.
Yeah. And they see it firsthand, which is, I think, before that it would be, how can I help, senior executive or, the managing department or just my partners? How can I help them see it? Well, hey, why don't we throw them into one and they'll see it for themselves, and we can help them grow and the plan grow.
Yeah, that's right. We, one of our clients 2 years ago, they, even though it came from the board, they still had to get the senior leadership team to really embrace the exercise regime. So they knew they had to test and stress test and really challenge their management team as well as the senior leadership team. So what they chose to do was to challenge the senior leadership team first and go through this process. And through that process, there was full engagement at the end from the senior leadership team. And they said, okay, we need our regions around the world to engage in this process, because there's so much good product that comes out of the end, because that's what you're looking to get out. What do we get out of this product? Yeah. And you get much more out of a training, an exercise where people are engaged in, being challenged against different simulated threats that may be presented to them, versus just having a conversation around a table, and then, with very little product coming out of the end. So when it's facilitated correctly, when it's organized correctly, when those challenges are presented in ways that are realistic, then you certainly get the attention of those executives. And as soon as you've got the executives on board, then obviously it spreads down to the various other levels of the organization. Absolutely.
And what do you find are, consistent takeaways that people, the aha moments most consistently seen by people?
Yeah. So one of the big ones is always awareness. So one of the questions we'll pose right at the very end of the session. So these sessions could go on, a full morning or a full day or several days if they're delivered through, some other kind of exercise platform, or simulated in other ways. They could go on for a while, but at the very end of the discussion, we'll often pose the question, and the question is, what are you going to do when you return to your workspace, when you return to your department, be it this afternoon or tomorrow or whenever you're returning to that department? What's the one thing that you're going to do to improve the preparedness of your organization? And as I mentioned there, awareness is very, very common, that response that we get. There are a number of others as well that are fairly common, which I can touch on shortly. And so the response is, I need to engage the rest of my department in this process. I need to make them aware that we are susceptible to various threats, and that we need to be concerned about various issues, that we are not as well prepared as we thought we were. So general awareness that spreads out throughout the organization is very common. The other common one that we often get out of this is two interesting ones, which are real. You would think, even for a mid-sized organization or even a large organization where you would think senior management or certainly at the management level, people are fairly familiar with each other. But we often see when we start these sessions, when people are entering the room, even organizations that are well established, you'll see people shaking each other's hand for the first time. Oh yeah, I've spoken to you on the phone, and these are part of the same crisis team. And they've spoken on the phone, or they've come together in some other virtual capacity, but they've never actually physically so that's fairly common. So that's quite an interesting one.
That is interesting.
There might be 10, 15, 20% of the group, and obviously if there's new members to the group, then they're introducing themselves for the first time. So that's something that we notice on a regular basis.
Oh, that is interesting.
Sorry?
That is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is an interesting one. And the other one, the other takeaway that we often see is the need for the ongoing engagement with the process. So often organizations will say, well, okay, these sessions are great, but they are we do have to organize them. They take time to organize, but we do get a tremendous amount of good product out of the end of them. But now we started this process, how do we continue it? So there's always that. They're always trying to understand, okay, now we've started, we need to continue this. So what we encourage them to do is not look at this as the one-off check the box, as we call it, exercise, crisis simulation, call it what you will. You have to build this into the DNA, because once you've started this process, it's like anything else. You want to continue it to maintain those skills at the various levels. So that's an important one, and so we see that as one of the questions that gets raised at the end. How do we now continue this? Now we have the buy-in at the various levels. How can we continue to make this a product and a tool that we can continually use? Update different scenarios, challenge our different new team members, challenge the organization at the different levels and the different business lines. So that's another one.
And that's the most important one.
So, certainly, yeah, certainly. Why go through this process if you are simply going to say, okay, well, we've done one session, we did get a nice report afterwards with some recommendations, but maybe we'll do one in another 3 to 5 years. Who knows? But we'll keep the board happy, or we'll keep our stakeholders happy for a few years. Well, that's obviously not the right way to go about it, and we are now seeing much more of an appetite towards building a program around crisis simulation exercises throughout the organization from top to bottom, and then integrating those top to bottom to make sure that we can communicate from the facility that may be burning down or had some incident, natural disaster happen where the operation has stalled for a period of time. So how do we communicate to the next level up? How do we communicate to the communicators that have to deal with internal stakeholders and as well as external, be it media, social media, whatever it may be? And then who communicates up to the senior leadership team? How do we keep them engaged? How do we go through our briefing cycle during a crisis? So tying all that in to these exercises becomes very valuable for these organizations. And what we find, Melissa, is that once they've started this process, they gain a tremendous amount of knowledge from us and other organizations that provide these types of services. And the ones that set their organization up in the right way will use that knowledge to be able to conduct their own exercises moving forward. So, we often get brought in to help organizations, and we'll do a lot of work up front to help them set up this process. And then maybe we'll come back every so often to conduct, a one-off exercise or help them out in some other way, shape or form, but on a lesser scale. So that, the ones that really understand that they need to have this skill in-house on a permanent basis is something that we're seeing organizations certainly move towards now.
Oh, definitely. I'm seeing it too. And it's funny, most people probably don't realize or maybe don't think about it, but there's so many, I have so many clients that simulations and, exercises, trainings, workshops, all of that, but say one big one with one main very keep you up at night incident, right? That's on everybody's mind, kind of in the back of your minds on a continual basis. Once a year they have an actual mandate that says, okay, last year we rehearsed if there was a plane crash with our key executives on it, what we would do. This year, let's rehearse. We want to do something that's more reputational, that impacts share price. And so there's these really smart organizations out there that are actually doing this once a year. And because it's fun, I think that's the key. When it's fun and it's engaging and it's interactive and everybody leaves, that day or that session going, wow, I learned more, or I know more than I thought I did. I'm better. I'm closer now on a very much deeper connection with my colleagues. And not just that, but, I sweat a little, but that was fun, that it makes them want to come back the next year. And in between years, I often see, I'll do, for example, I have an issues management day and a half course. So it's a 1-day course, and the next day I put everybody to the test, and it's, a soft simulation for issues management. Out of that, especially if you have different departments there. So you have, 3 people from your legal department, you have 3 people from marketing and PR and digital, and, some high up managers. And I'll see, especially when legal's involved, I'll see them pose so many questions that then it turns into, okay, I come back for another day session just with legal, and I have an attorney on my team. So we just talk about things like COPA and compliance and, how it impacts. So you're right in saying that there's so many, one simulation will lead to so many others, and they get just that thirst for knowledge.
That's yeah. I mean, you mentioned there the legal representation within the crisis management team. We have been known in the past during exercises. You have an agenda, right? When you're conducting an exercise, you have objectives to meet. We have to get towards the end of the day, and we have a number of objectives to meet throughout the day, and we have to engage in all those different groups, as you mentioned there, which are often represented on a committee, a crisis management committee within organizations. But you mentioned the legal folks there. We've often had to pull out the legal folks. Whoever the lead is for the legal, will say, look, part of the inject is, you've won the lottery, and well done. You can take the next hour off. So because they can't, and we've done that with, some, occasionally with other, outspoken individuals, because, they're good leaders, and that's great, but you want to give other people opportunity as well to step into those, shoes for the day. So there are different tactics you can use with regards to, making sure that everybody's engaged in the process.
Oh, that's interesting that you say that. My experience, actually, I have to say that I have some clients with legal departments that just really amazing people who really do get the new realities of today, right? They don't just sit there and say, no, we can't say that. We can't release a statement because that, or you can't do this. You can't. So I do have some really great clients with really great legal departments, but I've been in many situations where maybe it's not like you're saying where they're taking the lead, but it's that they're butting heads with me. Which is when I acquired my legal extension of my team, so that she can come in and say, listen, I get where you're coming from, but there's a bigger picture that we have to be aware of today.
Yes.
We have to work together.
Yeah, that's tremendous. It takes 1 or 2 sessions, but we have 2 or 3 particular clients where, that first session was very standoffish. And the second session they get more comfortable, and then by the third session it's kind of, okay, I understand the benefits of whether it's putting a press release out earlier rather than holding on and trying to wait for those facts that obviously never come or take several hours or days to come, and then they're inaccurate anyway. So what do we we're seeing a transition within our clients, and it takes it's not easy, but we're certainly seeing that as well, all the way through to the adoption of various different types of documents, which in early stages of we write reports and recommend that they have various documents to help support the crisis management process. One of the documents is a master events log. So as you know, as an event unfolds, you need to be able to document what's happening at the various stages and what's being done about it, because very quickly during an incident, especially a fast-moving crisis, you quickly lose track of what's happened. And so trying to go back through emails and text messages now, because that's big, and going back through all different types of documents can be a bit of a nightmare. So being able to manage that process is very important. And in the early stages, with our, some of our clients, the legal counsel are very standoff. Well, the less documents, the better. But then as time goes by, they see the benefits of it, and they see that, even if we were subpoenaed and we had to, leave all our laptops, or our laptops got taken, our machines, or whatever it was, they're going to have that information anyway, and they're going to see the emails and the transcripts and the communications that were going backwards and forwards. So wouldn't it be easier if we had a formal documented process that we followed to be able to work with the authorities, because we're going to have to anyway if there is some kind of major catastrophe and, we are subpoenaed to provide them with whatever. So they and that's just one example of the benefits of having a documented process. And, one of the examples of how, legal counsel, and again, it's about the experience really, so when they go through the experience of, going through these simulations and having those discussions with all the different constituents within the crisis team and beyond, they understand that there's going to be a lot of information flowing around. There's going to be, conversations that are happening at all different levels, across and up and down, as well as all the texts, emails, and everything else that's going on. So we need to, there are tremendous amounts of benefits of controlling that process, having a formal war room or location where we meet to really manage an event of any scale. So again, once, and not just the legal, seem to be pointing the finger at the legal folks here, but, other departments as well, where again, it's about experience. If, many individuals in these corporations have, often not experienced an event of any scale. Yes, they manage and put out the low-lying flames, if you will, on a regular day-to-day basis. That's what they do. But when we go in and we ramp it up several notches in terms of the catastrophe or the disaster, and then that really gets them thinking, because yes, they do manage media on a day-to-day basis. If they're a PR team, yes, they manage operations. EHS team manages the environmental and health and safety aspect of their business, and they put out those small flames on a day-to-day basis. And what we often say is, okay, we're today going to ramp that up for you. This is going to be something that you are on the breaking news. You will be above the fold tomorrow morning, be it the New York Times or whatever newspaper it may be. So you're front and center now, and this event is going to impact you. It's going to impact the reputation. So when you step it up a notch or two, then everybody. It's funny, the focus shifts very quickly, and it gets their attention. So there are obviously tremendous benefits around that.
Absolutely, it's eye-opening. It's not just that practice makes perfect. It's like you're saying, that it comes with a broader level of realization that just truly benefits the organization as a whole.
Right.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting, especially because you have so many, well, I do anyways, that come in who are forced to be there. It's like, okay, they blocked out a day and a half or 2 days or 1 day or half a day, whatever it may be. And mandatory, I was told that I have to come, and then they leave and they're going, well, thank you so much. And they're shaking your hand like, wow. So it can be very rewarding as well to help. Yeah. But that's, it's our passion, right? To go in and help organizations.
That's right.
Be better at this. So
yeah.
Excellent. And what about your own aha moments in doing this for as long as you've been doing it?
Sorry, repeat
your own
that again?
aha, because I asked you before what are like the aha moments that you see individual space. So what about you? What's like one or two of the biggest aha moments that you've had, whether it be anything?
Oh yeah. From on a personal level, or from from the organization standpoint, probably from.
Well, whatever you want. Just, I guess, when you think, I know that for me, I have some things that really stick out in mind. Maybe the first time I experienced pushback, just because we're talking about legal pushback. First time I experienced legal pushback was like, whoa, you know what I mean? And it made me change my approach.
Yeah.
Which proved to be beneficial.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the biggest one for me, both personally and for the organization, for PreparedEx, was with a client. This was about 5-6 years ago. They had to go through the process of conducting several exercises. This was a liquefied natural gas marine terminal up in Canada, actually. They had to appease so many different, both federal and provincial and local regulators. There were so many players because this was a brand new $1.2 billion facility. It was perceived as receiving these ships that were, large explosive devices that were, could take out half of the province. They were perceived as a high threat installation. So anyway, all these different security components and crisis risk components, emergency management, they had to deal with the locals. They had to deal with perception of LNG. So just a lot going on in a short period of time. Towards the end, as the facility was built over a 2-year, almost 3-year period, towards the end, they had to get their operational license to literally accept the first ship that was coming in. And part of that was they had to display that they were ready to deal with emergencies. So we had to set up 3 exercises: a tabletop exercise, a functional exercise leading into a large full-scale multi-agency exercise where fire, police, EMS, public safety, and the facility, the organization, all worked together through a simulated problem. Now, the issue here they had was at scheduling. One agency said, well, I can't make this day. Another department would say, well, I've got to be here on this day. And so anyway, this was a bit of a nightmare. So what we decided to do, we said, look, this is going to be difficult to get everybody on the same page. There's certainly a lack of time here because we have clearly have to have everything in place by a certain date. So why don't we take this simulation and put this online? because everything else is online now. So if you're a public safety, responsible for security, you can be wherever you are in the province or wherever you are in the world, and you can plug into this exercise. You can watch the team respond. You can see their responses through the application. So it was an aha moment in terms of, how do we bring people together? Well, in this world of, the internet, I thought to myself, no better way than having an application where both the organization internally and externally, they're owned by a Spanish organization and also owned partly by a Canadian corporation. So, we brought everybody together. And for those that couldn't make the sessions, of which there were quite a few, they logged in. They watched the team respond to various scenarios throughout the 3 exercises, and it was a great success. So, I guess that's probably the biggest aha moment when I was sat in this meeting, and all these various regulators, as well as internal and external stakeholders, were all trying to would come up with how do we see that you're ready for this? And I said, well, this is the only way we can do it and get everybody on the same page. And from that, it was a great moment for our business, because then we developed a product that was, able to, bring organizations together, and it's been successful ever since.
No kidding. And so is it streamlined live, or is it uploaded after, or both?
No, so yeah, you can post videos into there, or post responses. So let's say you're a public relations team, and you see that the media are camped out front. You respond to that, and then you post your responses into the system. Whether it's a media response or a response to a simulated tweet or some other post, or if you're a security team and you're faced with a simulated inject, then you would type your responses in there, post images or video into the system, so it's all collated within the system. So it's it's interactive. It's both ways. So you can have simulated media driven through there. We often do. We call it GNN instead of CNN, but simulated newsroom, where the newscaster is talking about an explosion or a fire or some kind of disaster or issue that a corporation or town, city, whatever it may be, is dealing with. So it's a central location for the delivery of content, and in this case, that content being simulation. Exercise content.
Awesome. Rob, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much. Tell us where people can find and follow you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn. So if you just search for Robert A. Burton, you'll find me on LinkedIn, but also via our website at PreparedEx, that's EX, preparedex.com. And obviously all the contact information is on that site there.
Very cool. So, and all of your information as well will be below on my blog post that will be launched with this.
Appreciate that.
Thanks so much for chatting with me, Rob. Always a pleasure.
No problem. Chat soon.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of the Crisis Intelligence Podcast. Stay tuned next Sunday when I speak with the fabulous Dr. and Professor Karen Freeberg, who is a professor over at the University of Louisville in Kentucky, and we're going to discuss crisis communication in higher ed. We appreciate all of your support, and if you could share this podcast with your followers and network, and even go on iTunes and Stitcher and write us a review, give us your thoughts and your feedback, as well as any questions and suggestions for topics that you may want to hear about in accordance with crisis communications, we definitely want to hear from you. Also, if you have any questions for Rob from this week's podcast that I either didn't ask or you think about later on, then feel free to send me your questions via email or through the blog post, and I'll make sure that your questions get to Rob, and I'll get you your answer probably in the form of a blog post on the Crisis Intelligence blog over at agnesday.com. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, and I look forward to talking more crisis intelligence with you next Sunday.